one thing that I do remember very clearly was, he said this a few times when I brought the plate in, you know, and there would be sabji, rice, dal, chapatis. He would say, this is so amazing to me, because when I was in India, everyone said, oh, Swamiji, don't go to America. In America, there will be no food for you. You'll starve. They eat only meat in America. Because back here, we're talking back in 25, 30 years ago, there wasn't that much interchange between India and America. So they would tell me, don't go there. And so I simply said, what is that? I shall live on bread and potatoes. And so I thought I would live on bread and potatoes, but now I see Krishna has sent everything. Dal, rice, chapatis, all sabji, everything. And he would say this quite like a number of times, how he was so amazed and happy that Krishna had sent everything, just as if he were in India. And but he thought that he was just going to live on bread and potatoes here.
There was another time, I didn't personally experience this, but Karunda told me the story, because he would come back every morning from the walks. Prabhupada was walking in LA, in Shevet Hills, and there was these big houses, and they walked past one house, big house. Prabhupada said, someday we'll have a big house like this for Krishna. Devotee said, Jai Prabhupada. So then Prabhupada walked a little further, and there was a big circular driveway and a big car, big, stretched limo or something. Prabhupada said, someday we'll have a big car like this for Krishna. Devotee said, Jai Prabhupada. So they walked to another house a little further, and out of nowhere this dog came running down the driveway and stopped. And Prabhupada said, someday we'll have a big dog like that for Krishna. Devotee said, Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, you fools, what do you want a big dog for? So not like a parrot, the devotees see in their innocence,
The night he had the stroke was a very traumatic experience. Jadharani and I were perched by the window looking in to the room. There was a window between his living room and his bedroom, it was an arch window in New York. And he was very weak, and still he would have the boys, Satsrup or Brahmananda or whoever was there, they would take turns. They would sit him up and open the Bhagavatam, and he would continue teaching and continue reading the story of Prahlad Maharaj. Even though he was, I'm saying he was apparently suffering, or he was apparently at a very critical time hovering between life and death, he didn't care for that. All he cared about was, he only cared about teaching us. And I never saw such selfless love. I was deeply affected at that moment. I realized a lot of things. I saw really pure love. I saw how much he loved us, and I realized that he wouldn't be with us very long. And I made a vow that I would do everything I could to take care of him and help him and do whatever I could to make things easier for him.
One devotee had told me that one thing you should do is you should always try to ask questions of Prabhupada, but you should think a little bit, and every time he gives a class, ask a good question. So, since I had that advice, I every time at the end of a class I'd always ask a question, trying to think of something that was in the class. And then sometimes Prabhupada would, I remember one time I asked a question about Radharani something and said, who are you to ask about Radharani? Or then sometime I would ask, every day I would ask questions. And so it would be a regular, I would ask questions and then Prabhupada would respond, and he would respond every day in a different way. So then we had to work, we had to go outside and work to maintain the Montreal temple. There was no source of income. So I would miss the evening class, and I would be able to just come to the morning class. But the next day I'd listen to the tape. So the one time I was listening to the tape, and at the end of class Prabhupada said, anyone has any questions? And nobody had any questions. And he said, Jai Pataka, or Jay or whatever, I forget, whether I was initiated or not, I don't remember. So he asked nice questions. So that was like a big thing for me. Otherwise, Prabhupada didn't praise disciples normally to their face. He would always be very grave with the disciples, but sometimes you'd hear that he would comment to other devotees, and you'd hear it through the grapevine. So this time I heard it on the tape. Someone told me you should listen to the tape.
This is an Indian professor, and he was saying, it was all one. You know, and Prabhupada was explaining there's a source and there's byproducts. It's not transformation, it's byproducts. And Prabhupada said, if I say cotton ball or cotton shirt, is there a difference? And the man saying, yeah, cotton ball, cotton shirt, it is. You know, Prabhupada said, if I say cotton ball or cotton shirt, is there a difference? And the man said, cotton, it is. You know, he was going on like this. And Prabhupada, he said it 3 or 4 times. It was a low, you know, Prabhupada was sitting in a room at a low table, and the man was sitting on the other side. Prabhupada reached over, grabbed the man by the shirt, and shook him and said, if I say cotton ball or cotton shirt, is there a difference? And the man, he got it. It wasn't just, he didn't just get it to be polite. Prabhupada actually shook through his, you know, dull cow brain, you know, buffalo brain, and the guy got it. There's a difference, cotton ball and cotton shirt. However, after the, and it was friendly, and the, you know, the man could do like this. But after the men left, Prabhupada pointed out, Prabhupada said, this is the special sanction of old men and little children. They can go anywhere and they can say anything. So and said, you cannot imitate. So don't, you know, brahmacharis, don't try this at home.
I remember I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and he just stopped by the side of a church. He looked at it and he said that in the future our ISKCON temples are going to be something like the churches. That there'll be some devotees in the temple, but there'll be many devotees who live around the temple, and they'll be coming on the weekends or the festivals. And at that time, there's only maybe a dozen, or I don't know, maybe 1970. I don't know exactly how many temples there were, but there weren't that many temples, and the whole mood was making temples and joining the temple, being a temple devotee. But here Prabhupada was saying that in the future, the temples would be more like a center, and there'd be big communities around the temple of people worshiping Krishna in their home. So that I always remembered that, because of course now I have to do a lot of, I'm doing a lot of coordination of congregational program. So that instruction really has a lot of importance to me now. But at that time, I didn't really know what to think of it. It was just like a prediction or something.
I know once when we were in New Jersey, a funny thing happened. We used to sit and all eat. He would sit on the sofa and he would eat on a little table in front of the sofa, and we would sit on the floor and we would all eat there. And we'd talk about different things during the meal. And so I remember one time we were talking about brown rice, white rice, long grain rice, this rice, that rice. And I was, and he was saying how his servant, there was one servant that he had that didn't like the long grain fine rice. His taste was for the lesser quality rice because that was his taste, you know. And then we were talking about, he was saying how brown rice is for the animals. And so I said, well, I must be an animal because I really like brown rice. And he just laughed. He just laughed and laughed and laughed because it was such a simple, it was really done in a mood of simplicity, you know, but he really thought that was funny.
When Prabhupada was, there's a part, after you go through the park and the kind of the museums and everything, there's a part you come through, it's all forest, and it becomes a little quieter. And I'd walked there many times, devotees had walked there, we'd never seen this. When Prabhupada came, all the deer came on both sides of the walkway, of the you know, there's like a forest on the side, and they walked with us. They'd run ahead, maybe 20 yards ahead, and they would wait. And then Prabhupada would catch up, and they'd run ahead, and they would wait. And they followed us all the way down and all the way back. It happened twice when Srila Prabhupada was there. The only two times he walked. And one of the devotees quoted the Atmarama verse, that even the dull animals can appreciate, you know. And we were thinking, what is the status of Srila Prabhupada? That he's like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. No, we were not, you know, make some sahaja thing, but like Prabhupada, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they could sense here was a pure person, a fearless person.
I remember many things that happened when Prabhupada was in Montreal. Like we'd walk to McGill University or walk around the block, and Prabhupada would stop and make observations. One time he was saying that if you see a very healthy person, someone who's like very big, then you can ask him, where does he do his grocery shopping? because obviously he must have a good source because he's healthy. And just so happened that a taxi drove up and let somebody out, and the taxi driver came out and he was very big. Then Prabhupada said, yeah, go ask him, where does he do his shopping? The Prabhupada was just very spontaneous like that. And then so the devotee went over and asked him where he did his shopping, and the taxi driver, of course, kind of bewildered why someone was asking where he bought his groceries.